I've been doing this for a few sort of cycles.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing these days lots of people raise seed funds.
Yep.
We're seeing people with almost no business experience getting double-digit valuations for their first round,
Mm-hmm.
like before they even have much traction. How does a seed investor kind of navigate that?
So
I know you're one person who you're sort of known for being disciplined in the sense that you won't do those.
Yeah, we're painful.
You won't do those 12 pre,
Nope. And
YC deals or whatever, right?
And I think that at the end of the day, you have a certain strategy, and there is always flexibility around things like valuations and stuff like that. But the point is, we take a huge amount of risk by going in early, and if ever we're not getting the reward of the multiple that we get in the next round, or whatever, it's just a problem with the economics and the way sort of things.
But if you say I won't do it for more than $5 million valuation, and meanwhile other people are throwing the money at twice the price, are you just simply sort of arguing that you're that much more helpful, or do you just try to find the deals other people are missing, or
No, we're basically saying, look, we're comfortable doing it for X, and we want a certain level of ownership, and if ever we don't get the ownership or it's too expensive, we'll just bid farewell and really sort of wish good luck and pass. And to be honest, we see so many deals that
I just feel like there's so much stuff out there. Though. There's so many seed investors now that it's just, I wonder if it's still a good time to be.
Yeah, because I think there is still, look at it. There's really sort of three buckets of financing today in the ecosystem. You have, as you said, a bunch of micro VCs, and as you know, we're all very friendly to each other because most of us come from a background of being angel investors, having been successful, having worked hard and raise our own fund. And so it's not like we stole the money, right?
Yeah.
And so we're really happy to work with everyone in the ecosystem, provided that they add value to their companies. That's the major thing. Then you have all this sort of new breed of angel investors. Some people made money on secondaries on Facebook or sold the company or whatever, and that has created like a huge influx of capital in the angel ecosystem. It's all positive. Most of these guys are really, really smart and can really help the companies, but they don't really have any price sensitivity because they don't have any real reference. And then you have traditional VCs where the valuation at which they invest doesn't really matter because it's only 100K or 200K.
Well, they're buying an option. They're not really
and they're
investing.
buying the option.
Yeah.
And so we're the only ones here who worry about what sort of economics do we get on our initial investment because it actually matters to us, right? And so we're very clear with entrepreneurs. Yes, we have the reputation to be sort of much more disciplined, and we are. And we say, look, this is the way we look at this opportunity, and this is what we're ready to invest at. And if you want double valuation, we'll just pass. And we'll sort of argue that they should work with us because of the experience, the fit, or whatever. And in some cases, we might just be as good as other investors, so they should just go with someone else.
Let's talk about this, what people call signaling risk.
Yep.
Basically, in a seed round, having a large VC put in 100,000, or some people have you've seen situations now where they'll have 5 large VCs put in 100,000 or something like this, which we all know that $500 million funds, the 100,000 is not an actual investment. It's an option, so they can put more money in. They don't actually care about the 100,000. And what happens, and I think we're in companies together where this happens, where you get an email saying, large firm just decided they aren't going to follow on their 100,000, and then they say, hey Chris, can you introduce me to some other large firm? I'm like, well, how am I going to explain to them why this VC? It just makes it a lot harder, right? Because the first question they say is, why is
X not doing the round?
That's right.
And I think we have roughly 18 months of data now where we've always been careful to try and avoid having more than one firm in the seed rounds, because if ever you have like multiple ones, then it's absolutely worse.
Yeah, because some entrepreneurs think they can mitigate it by having 4. I don't know.
It's a disaster. The issue, which I actually have lived through 3 times over the past 6 months, is so there is definitely a signaling whether the company is doing not that great or is doing really well. Because there's always this notion of, the outsider looking in saying, firm XYZ on the cap table. And what I try to do is to bury them saying, look, me and my co-lead are like, 70% of the round, so don't even don't even look through, right? The rest is sort of irrelevant. But no, they are, and they sort of want to do what firm X is going to be doing. And if they don't pass, they say, well, I'm just going to do my work to price the company. So you have an outside price, and then they're going to beat me.
I'm the stalking horse.
I'm the stalking horse, and so I'm not going to,
so
bother with that.
Just to explain, the logic is no one wants to be a stalking horse because you're basically getting used. So like,
you do the work.
I'm the firm that's not in there. I do all this research, everything else. I say, okay, I'll invest at a $15 million valuation. Then the insider says, hey, this is the existing VC already on the cap table. Hey, we'll do it. And maybe they don't have contractual rights to do it, but they have a lot of influence. And
they have influence, and not to be too technical, but because they already own a small portion of the company at a low valuation, they can therefore beat the price of the other firm and get to the same ownership.
The same blended valuation.
Same blended valuation. And so at the end of the day, that's an issue. The other is, well, you're an insider. You know what's going on. You don't do the deal, it means there's something wrong. There's something fishy that I haven't figured out in my
I think of it as like
diligence.
Like there's sort of 80% of the time you're doing pretty well, but it's not obvious. Like so maybe you're hitting out of the park, or maybe you're a disaster. But that 80% of the time, the Series A is a very nuanced and sensitive process, and the posture of the inside investors
is
affects
really important,
right?
Yeah, and it also depends on your strategy. So if you look at the big funds, they all have sort of a seed strategy, and some of them have been really sort of aggressive in doing the next round. So I can think of one firm that has done of the few seed rounds I've seen them do. 2 of them were like very large rounds, like a few months later.
Yeah, well, I think like Union Square is a good example, like, where I've always seen them. They do their seeds. They intend to follow on. I mean, that's their stance, and I think they almost always have in my experience.
Because they only do a handful.
Yeah, that's right. Versus other firms who literally will write 25 grand checks at a conference and then tell the company, call me when you get a term sheet.
And I've done a few deals with Foundry at seed stage, and they have the firm intention to do the DA themselves, provided that the company is just proving itself, because it's not systematic, right? So to me, the advice I give to entrepreneurs is, unless there is a specific value that you have identified in that partner, and unless there is commitment on the time that partner is going to spend with you, as if he had made a larger investment, understand that there is a negative effect on bringing that brand name on board. So really understand where you're going to get yourself into. If you can't point to me the specific value which is going to be created, don't do it.
Yeah, I've almost, as a seed investor, stopped doing those deals. If the entrepreneur wants to take, it's just going to make the next. I just know now from experience it's going to make the next round, and I try to be helpful on that round. And it's just like I can't do my job if they're going to start off with by hobbling themselves with this bad cap table. I don't know, but
that's the issue. And unfortunately, I've heard now, not in the portfolio, but I've heard some friends who were angel investors, who did some of those headless deals, so where there's a bunch of guys coming together, but there's not one person who's putting the deal together and who's basically responsible to really help the company on behalf of the other investors. These are the so-called
party rounds.
Yeah. The lead.
Well, what happens then is that there's no lead, and that means if the company's not doing, wants to get sold or whatever, no one steps up. You've seen this happen, right? I mean, no one steps up to help and do when investors can really be helpful, right?
Yeah, and we spend because obviously we fail a bunch of times, and I'm not sure whether it's we lose eventually 20 or 25% of the companies, but I guess we must be around 20% now over the life of the portfolio. And at some point, someone has to actually do the work of trying to sell the company, find a soft landing. And it's not so much the cash we get back to the investor. Obviously, it's our duty, but it's also make sure that we find a good situation for the founders and the employees. And if you're not responsible for that, then you're just not going to do it. So we end up doing a lot of that work, even if we're not, a large investor. And that's why when we decided to move from Fund 2 to Fund 3, we said, might as well get the ownership that goes with the responsibility that we take anyway.
Yeah.
And so that's why we said, now we're just saying, well, we buy 5 to 10% of the companies. We build up the management bandwidth of the team. So there's Charles, there's Steph, then myself, and we'll eventually add a third partner sometime this year. So that not so much we can increase the deal flow or the deal bandwidth, it's really the support bandwidth that we want to add.